Ever since the beginning of superstar rock bands, there have been stories of bands that love each other, soon turning into bandmates who hate each other. From fistfights backstage to expensive divorces, slinging matches on Twitter, and even arguments descending into food fights.
I went, really? And then I got it and I went right in his face. So I thought, that's it. Big fight. He's probably going to win because he's a strong guy.
These are the stories of superstar bandmates who were once best friends, becoming bandmates who are now mortal enemies. The Kinks. The Kinks were formed by brothers Ray and Dave Davies and are renowned not only for their influential music, but also for the intense sibling rivalry and internal conflicts that had marked their career. The Davies brothers' tumultuous relationship often spilled over into their professional lives, which led to a series of dramatic incidents that became legendary in rock and roll history. From the early days of the Kinks, the tensions between the pair were palpable. Dave's wild and rebellious nature had often clashed with Ray's more controlling personality, and one of the most infamous incidents occurred in 1965 during a performance on the TV show Ready, Steady, Go. And that's when Dave kicked over Ray's drum kit in a fit of anger. It was only the beginning of their public feuding. The band's chaotic onstage behavior mirrored their offstage turmoil. During a 1965 tour, an argument between the brothers escalated into a physical fight and resulted in the Kinks getting banned from performing in the United States for 4 years. This ban significantly impacted their career, limiting their international success during a crucial period. Their 1969 album Arthur, or The Decline and Fall of the British Empire, would be marked with disagreements over musical direction. Ray's concept-driven approach often clashed with Dave's desire for a more raw and straightforward rock sound, and these creative differences continued to strain their relationship. The 1970s and 80s would see numerous lineup changes and further conflicts. During the recording of their 1981 album, Give the People What They Want, tensions were running high, which led to frequent arguments and near physical altercations. Despite the constant infighting, the band had managed to produce a string of successful albums and hit singles. The Kinks' story is one of both remarkable musical achievement and also relentless internal strife. And the volatile relationship between Ray and Dave Davies had fueled some of their greatest work, while also preventing the band from achieving even greater heights. Fleetwood Mac. Just like the Kinks, Fleetwood Mac is almost as famous for its internal conflicts as it is for its music. The band's most tumultuous period began in the mid-1970s with the addition of Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. The personal relationships in the band would soon become intertwined with their professional lives, and that led to a series of legendary feuds. At the heart of the drama was the breakup of the band's two couples. John and Christine McVie's marriage had fallen apart, which led to tensions between the bassist and keyboardist. Simultaneously, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, who were also romantically involved, experienced a bitter breakup, and the emotional fallout from the failed relationships had fueled much of the raw and confessional songwriting on their 1977 album Rumors. Christine McVie's song, You Make Loving Fun, was about her affair with the band's lighting director, and that further strained her relationship with John. Nicks and Buckingham's volatile relationship would be reflected in their contributions as well, with Nicks's Dreams and Buckingham's Go Your Own Way serving as pointed messages to each other. Mick Fleetwood, the band's drummer, also had his fair share of drama, having an affair with Nicks, which added another layer of complexity to the already strained group dynamic. These interpersonal conflicts were spilling over into their live performances and studio sessions, creating an environment that was fraught with tension.
What were you saying to Stevie?
Well, I think both of those are basically saying, hey, I'm resigned to whatever happens, but, it's a damn shame.
The internal strife continued on for decades, with Buckingham's eventual firing from the band in 2018 marking one of the latest chapters in their storied history of discord. But despite all the conflicts, Fleetwood Mac had managed to produce some of the most enduring music of the rock era, proving that creative tension can sometimes lead to extraordinary art. Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd's history is as rich with internal drama as it is with groundbreaking music.
Don't be afraid to care.
The band's early years were marked by the increasingly erratic behavior of Syd Barrett, the original frontman and primary songwriter. Barrett's heavy use of mind-altering substances led to unpredictable performances and a decline in his mental health, and that prompted the band to replace him with guitarist David Gilmour in 1968. The bittersweet decision would leave a long-lasting impact on the band's dynamic. As Pink Floyd evolved, bassist Roger Waters assumed near total creative control by the mid-1970s, which led to significant tensions, especially with Gilmour. The 1979 album The Wall became a high point for Waters, but exacerbated the power struggle within the band. Waters' dominance had clashed with Gilmour's artistic visions, creating a fractious working environment. One of the most dramatic moments came during the recording of The Wall, when Waters insisted on firing keyboardist Richard Wright due to personal and professional disagreements. Wright was relegated to a salaried musician for live performances, deepening the rift within the band while marking the beginning of the end for the classic lineup. The release of The Final Cut in 1983 would essentially be a Roger Waters solo album and highlighted the widening gap between Waters and the rest of the band. The production was fraught with tension, as Waters' control over the project had further strained their relationships. Following the departure of Waters in 1985, a legal battle then ensued over the use of the Pink Floyd name. Waters believed the band should disband without him, while Gilmour and drummer Nick Mason had wished to continue. The dispute would eventually be settled out of court and allowed Gilmour and Mason to carry on as Pink Floyd. The band's final album, The Division Bell, saw a return of Richard Wright and a more collaborative spirit, even though the past conflicts had left lingering scars. The last performance with Waters was at Live 8 in 2005, showcasing a fragile truce amongst the members. Tensions between Waters and the rest of the band never really disappeared, though, with accusations being made and members lashing out at each other. A recent tweet put out by Polly Sampson, David Gilmour's wife, accused Waters of being an anti-Semitic, hypocritical misogynist, amongst many other things. David Gilmour then retweeted the comment in agreement with his wife. Despite all of the internal conflicts, Pink Floyd had created some of the most influential music in rock history, and their legacy is a testament to how creative tensions can fuel extraordinary artistry. Simon and Garfunkel. Like Pink Floyd, the partnership of Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel, one of the most iconic duos in music history, would be fraught with conflict and dramatic fallout. From their early days, Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel's relationship would be marred with creative differences and personal tensions, and as the primary songwriter, Paul Simon's ambition and perfectionism would often clash with Art Garfunkel's more relaxed approach. The differences simmered beneath the surface, occasionally boiling over, and the success of their soundtrack for The Graduate had catapulted them to fame, but also increased the pressures on their partnership. During that time, Garfunkel began to pursue an acting career, which had led to friction between the pair. His role in Mike Nichols' film Catch-22 caused delays in recording of the next album, Bridge Over Troubled Water. The creation of the album was both a high point and a breaking point for the group. The title track, featuring Garfunkel's soaring vocals, became one of the duo's biggest hits. However, Paul Simon soon felt overshadowed and sidelined by it all. Simon's frustrations with Garfunkel's outside interests, particularly his acting career, had compounded the growing tension.
We didn't agree about, we're friends since we were 12 years old, but our musical inclinations are quite different. And so we would have disagreements, and the disagreements could be, real arguments that could stop a session.
Following the release of Bridge Over Troubled Water, the duo officially split up in 1970. Simon had felt that Garfunkel's acting career was taking precedence over the music, while Garfunkel resented Simon's control over the creative process. Their breakup would be acrimonious, with both artists embarking on solo careers after. Despite several reunions over the years, old tensions quickly resurfaced. Their 1981 Central Park concert had drawn over 500,000 fans, but was then followed with more disagreements. Their 2003 and 4 Old Friends tour was another attempt at reconciliation, but once again, creative and personal conflicts had plagued their efforts. The Monkees. The Monkees were initially created as a television show in 1966, and they experienced numerous conflicts and fallouts all throughout their career. The band's members, Davy Jones, Mickey Dolenz, Michael Nesmith, and Peter Tork, were all hired as actors, and producers controlled the music. This lack of artistic freedom had led to frustrations amongst the members, who often felt constrained and inauthentic. By the end of 1966, Nesmith and Tork had begun pushing for more creative control, and their rebellion against music supervisor Don Kirshner had culminated in Nesmith famously punching a hole in the wall during a heated meeting. This act of defiance led to Kirshner's departure in early 1967, and the band then gained more control over the music, which resulted in the album Headquarters. Despite the small victory, internal conflicts persisted. Nesmith and Tork often clashed over their differing musical directions, with Nesmith preferring a country rock sound, which conflicted with Tork's inclination towards folk and pop. The differences led to tensions during recording sessions and the decision-making process. In 1968, Peter Tork was first to leave the band, citing exhaustion and frustration with the group's internal dynamics, and the cancellation of their television show, along with the commercial failure of their movie Head, would further contribute to the decision. Nesmith then left in 1970 to pursue a solo career, driven by creative differences and a desire to distance himself from the Monkees' manufactured image. His exit would mark the ending of the original lineup's active collaboration. The Monkees then reunited several times over the years, but each reunion would bring about its own set of conflict. The 1986 reunion tour saw tensions resurfacing, particularly between Nesmith and the other members. Nesmith's sporadic participation in reunions created a sense of inconsistency and unease within the group. Davy Jones and Mickey Dolenz would often find themselves caught between Nesmith and Tork's conflicts, and while they had their disagreements, Jones and Dolenz had managed to maintain a more stable relationship while focusing on their performances and public appearances.
I never liked Peter, and he never liked me. So we had an uneasy truce.
Despite the internal conflicts, the Monkees had left a long-lasting impact on pop culture and music, and their ability to produce memorable hits amidst personal and professional turmoil is a testament to their talent and resilience. Oasis. Fronted by the famously feuding Gallagher brothers, Liam and Noel, Oasis is as well known for their internal drama as they are for their anthemic rock music. The band's tumultuous history is marked by numerous conflicts, fights, and fallouts, which often play out publicly. From the outset, the dynamic between the pair was marred with tension and aggression. Their explosive relationship had fueled their music, but also led to frequent arguments. The success of their debut album, Definitely Maybe, and the follow-up, What's the Story, Morning Glory, had brought increased pressures and media scrutiny, which amplified their conflicts. One of the earliest publicized incidents took place in 1996 during an MTV Unplugged performance. Liam had pulled out at the last minute, citing a sore throat, but later heckled Noel from the balcony as he took over the lead vocals, an incident that highlighted the growing rift between the brothers. In 2000, a particularly severe altercation took place during their European tour when Noel temporarily quit the band. The fight had reportedly begun when Liam questioned the legitimacy of Noel's daughter, leading to several canceled shows and a public acknowledgement of their volatile relationship. The final and most significant fallout occurred in 2009. Before a gig in Paris, a violent altercation between the pair ended with Noel announcing his departure from the band while citing an inability to work with Liam. This would mark the official ending of the band. The tension between the two has never been fully laid to rest, and constant veiled insults are exchanged on Twitter on a regular basis. One particular slinging match began when Noel called brother Liam a coward for not calling his brother to discuss an Oasis reunion. Liam then responded on Twitter calling out his brother for not showing up to play at the concert that paid tribute to those who were lost in the 2017 Ariana Grande bombing incident. But even today, fans around the world are still hoping for a reconciliation with the Gallagher brothers and a subsequent reformation of the band. Deep Purple. Deep Purple was formed in 1968 and quickly became renowned not only for their music, but also for internal conflicts and numerous lineup changes. The original lineup included Ritchie Blackmore, John Lord, Nick Semper, Ian Pace, and Rod Evans, and early tensions and disagreements over musical direction led to the replacement of Evans and Semper, with Ian Gillan and Roger Glover establishing the classic Mark II lineup. One of the most significant and enduring conflicts would be between guitarist Ritchie Blackmore and vocalist Ian Gillan. Their personalities and creative visions would often clash, and Gillan's departure in 1973 was largely due to ongoing tensions with Blackmore, who was known for his demanding and confrontational nature. Glover had left the band following the exit of Gillan. The introduction of David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes in 1973 had brought about fresh talent, but also brand new conflicts. Blackmore's dissatisfaction with the musical direction of the band had led to his departure in 1975, where he was then replaced with Tommy Bolin, whose struggles with substance abuse had further led to instability. The tragic death of Tommy Bolin in 1976 would lead to the band's temporary disbandment. One of the most legendary incidents in the annals of rock history took place within the ranks of Deep Purple in what became known as the Spaghetti Incident. This occurred during a particularly stressful recording session in Rome for the group. Frustrations were running high and the atmosphere was tense, and during a break in the sessions, an argument broke out between Ian Gillan and Ritchie Blackmore, who were already known for their volatile relationship. The argument quickly escalated and led to a food fight, in which spaghetti was thrown all around the studio.
Really? And then I got it and I went right in his face, you know. So I thought, that's it. Big fight. He's probably going to win because he's a strong guy.
Deep Purple reunited with the classic Mark II lineup in 1984, but old tensions would quickly rise. The strained relationship between Blackmore and Gillan then led to Gillan's dismissal. The early 1990s saw continued conflicts between Blackmore and the rest of the band, and during a 1993 tour, his dissatisfaction would reach its peak, resulting in his final departure. He was then replaced by Joe Satriani for a brief period, and then by Steve Morse, whose entry had brought stability to the lineup. Despite Blackmore's exit, internal conflicts would persist. John Lord's retirement in 2002 would mark the ending of an era, but the band had found a new groove with Don Airey. While occasional tensions and creative differences continued on, the band had managed to maintain relative stability. Despite their internal conflicts and numerous lineup changes, Deep Purple left a great impact on rock music history. The Sex Pistols. The Sex Pistols were formed in 1975 and quickly became notorious for their internal conflicts and public controversies. The original lineup included Johnny Rotten as the frontman, Steve Jones on guitar, Paul Cook on drums, and Glenn Matlock on bass. Early tensions arose due to differing personalities and backgrounds, with Matlock seen as more conventional compared to the rest of the band, which led to friction. In 1977, Glenn Matlock's departure would mark a major incident. Officially, he had left due to musical differences, but rumors suggested his clean-cut demeanor had clashed with the band's chaotic image. Matlock was replaced by Sid Vicious, who had epitomized the punk image, but had very limited music ability, which further increased the internal chaos. Sid Vicious's entry into the band had brought numerous problems. His substance abuse issues and lack of musical skill caused a lot of frequent conflict, and his unpredictable behavior often strained his relationship with Johnny Rotten while destabilizing the band. The band's 1976 tour was plagued with cancellations and media backlash. The infamous Bill Grundy interview, where the band members swore on live television, brought about significant controversy and heightened internal tensions as they struggled to cope with sudden notoriety.
Well, tell me more about it.
Fucking spent it, haven't we?
I don't know, have you?
Yeah, it's all gone.
Recording their only studio album, Nevermind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols, was marked with disputes and creative differences. The producer had navigated the band's dynamics to complete the album, and Sid Vicious's limited participation due to his substance abuse further strained their relations. In 1978, they embarked on a U.S. tour that was equally disastrous, with internal conflicts reaching their peak. Tensions between Rotten and the band, along with their manager Malcolm McLaren, had escalated. Rotten felt increasingly isolated and disillusioned by the band's direction and McLaren's management. The tour ended abruptly with Rotten walking off stage during a show in San Francisco, uttering the famous line, "Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?" The culmination of that U.S. tour saw the band breaking up, and Sid Vicious continued to be involved in very controversial dealings, including the death of his girlfriend Nancy Spungen. It only added to the band's tragic narrative. Sid Vicious then died of an overdose in 1979, cementing his status as a punk rock icon.
And I felt really guilty about bringing him into the Pistols because he was ill-equipped mentally to deal with the pressures.
Despite the brief existence and the internal conflicts, the band left a long-lasting impact on the punk rock movement. Their rebellious spirit and raw energy had influenced countless bands while also defining a generation. Journey. Journey is one of rock and roll's most enduring bands and has experienced significant internal conflict, argument, and fallouts all throughout their existence. Formed in 1973, Journey's early years were marked by many lineup changes and a quest for commercial success. The addition of Steve Perry in 1977 brought about newfound fame while also introducing internal tension. Perry's perfectionism and control over the band's sound would lead to frequent clashes with other members and was a driving force behind the departure of Greg Rowley in 1980 because he felt burned out from the relentless touring and creative differences. All throughout the 1980s, Journey's success would be overshadowed by ongoing conflict. Perry's dominance had strained the relationships with other members, including drummer Steve Smith and bassist Roy Valerie. These tensions would come to a head in 1987 when Perry insisted on a hiatus following the release of Raised on Radio. This would cause a lot of frustration amongst the band's members who were eager to maintain the momentum. The band then reunited in 1996 for Trial by Fire, but Perry's hip injury and subsequent surgery delay would lead to his departure in 1998. The band then decided to continue on, hiring Steve Algeri as his replacement. The 2000s brought about further turmoil and legal battles along with lineup changes. In recent years, tensions within the band have intensified, and in 2020, a lawsuit was filed that alleged that Jonathan Cain had set up an American Express card without the knowledge of the band, leading to financial and management disputes. The legal battle highlighted deep-seated issues within the band's management and creative direction, and Cain then went on record saying that he had watched Neil damage the brand for many years and was a victim of him and his wife's behavior. Despite all of these internal conflicts and numerous lineups, Journey has continued on and has made a strong mark on rock and roll music. Their iconic hits and ability to adapt to changing circumstances demonstrate their resilience and talent, and their legacy has been defined by powerful performances and enduring popularity, despite all the personal and professional turmoil that has characterized their existence. Styx. Styx was formed in 1972 and quickly gained popularity with a unique blending of hard rock and progressive elements. The classic lineup included Dennis DeYoung, Tommy Shaw, James Young, Chuck Panozzo, and John Panozzo, and as the band's success would grow, so did their internal tension, particularly over the music direction and leadership. One of the most significant and enduring conflicts in Styx involved Dennis DeYoung. As the primary songwriter and vocalist, DeYoung's desire for a more theatrical and pop-oriented sound would clash with the rest of the band's desire for a more harder-edge rock and roll. This creative tension became a defining feature of the band's internal dynamics. The band's creative differences came to a head in 1983 when the album Kilroy Was Here was released. DeYoung's ambitious concept and theatrical staging would be met with resistance from the rest of the band, who felt that it deviated too far from their rock and roll roots. The tour was equally marred by disagreements and logistical challenges, which led to increased friction. By 1984, tensions had reached their breaking point, which led to Tommy Shaw leaving the band. Shaw had cited creative differences and frustration with the band's direction as being the reasons for his exit, but Styx went on hiatus shortly afterward, and the members would pursue separate projects. Styx then reunited in the early 1990s, but old tensions quickly grew back. The band had released Edge of the Century with new guitarist Glenn Burtnick replacing Shaw, and despite the initial success, their dynamics had remained strained. Shaw rejoined in 1995, but the conflicts between DeYoung and the rest of the band were persisting.
You know, at this stage in my life, I want to be happy. I want to be around people who love me.
In 1999, Dennis DeYoung would be replaced due to health issues and disagreements over touring schedules. He wanted to delay the tour due to a viral illness that was affecting his ability to perform, but the rest of the band, particularly that of Shaw and Young, decided to move forward without him. DeYoung's departure had marked a significant shift in both the band's lineup and their dynamic. Following DeYoung's departure, legal battles ensued over the use of the Styx name, along with the royalties. DeYoung and the remaining members have had a contentious relationship that's been marked with public disputes and legal confrontations. Despite all of their internal conflicts and numerous lineup changes, Styx has endured and is a beloved rock and roll band to this day. Aerosmith. Aerosmith was formed in 1970 and quickly rose to fame with their blues-infused hard rock sound. The classic lineup of Steven Tyler, Joe Perry, Brad Whitford, Tom Hamilton, and Joey Kramer achieved tremendous success, but it also came with significant internal pressures, especially involving substance abuse and creative control. In the 1970s, the success of Aerosmith would be marred by heavy substance and alcohol abuse. Steven Tyler and Joe Perry came to be known as the Toxic Twins and were particularly notorious for their substance abuse, leading to erratic behavior, missed performances, and increasing tensions within the band. This volatile environment had strained relationships amongst all the members. The tensions came to a head in '79 when Joe Perry left the band following a backstage altercation with Steven Tyler, during which Perry's wife had thrown a glass of milk.
Chairs were flying and things were being thrown.
This incident was the tipping point after months of escalating conflict. Brad Whitford left the band in '81, frustrated with its direction and the internal chaos, and then Perry and Whitford's departures would mark a low point for the band, both creative and commercially. Perry and Whitford rejoined Aerosmith in 1984, leading to a resurgence in their popularity. However, old tensions would quickly come back. Creative differences, particularly between Tyler and Perry, had continued to plague the band, and the recording sessions for their albums were often contentious, with disputes over musical direction and songwriting credits. Despite all of it, though, the late 1980s and early 90s became a period of renewed success for the band, with releases like Permanent Vacation, Pump, and Get a Grip. The band's members then underwent intensive rehab, which had helped to stabilize their relationships temporarily, but the underlying issues still remained. In 2009, tensions reached a brand new peak when Steven Tyler fell off the stage during a performance, which led to a hiatus, and during his recovery, he had announced plans to pursue solo projects, which caused a rift within the rest of the band. Rumors of Tyler being replaced, along with public spats, particularly between Tyler and Perry, had created a media frenzy, and the situation escalated with Tyler entering rehab for the overuse of painkillers, further straining his relationship with bandmates. In recent years, Aerosmith has faced additional conflict, particularly regarding touring and health issues. Joey Kramer's 2019 lawsuit against the band, alleging unfair exclusion from performances due to an injury, had only highlighted the ongoing tensions. Despite all the issues, Aerosmith has continued to perform and tour, maintaining their status as rock and roll legends. Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses was formed in 1985 and quickly skyrocketed to fame with their debut album, Appetite for Destruction. The classic lineup featured Axl Rose, Slash, Izzy Stradlin, Duff McKagan, and Steven Adler. However, their rapid success came with the significant internal pressures, especially involving substance abuse and Axl Rose's volatile behaviors.
With my assorted addictions, so I felt very in control of it in one hand.
The band's early years were plagued by heavy and alcohol use, leading to erratic behavior and missed performances. Steven Adler's addiction problems became a major issue,
I possibly could to try and kill myself,
affecting his drumming and his reliability. In 1990, he was released from the band due to his inability to perform and replaced by drummer Matt Sorum. Adler later sued the band, claiming that he was unfairly dismissed. Axl Rose's control over the band, along with his unpredictable behavior, would lead to frequent conflict. Known for his perfectionism and volatile temper, he often delayed shows for hours, causing frustration amongst bandmates and fans alike. His insistence on creative control would lead to clashes, particularly with those of Slash and Izzy Stradlin. In 1991, Stradlin left the band due to frustrations with Rose's behavior and the band's use, and Stradlin had cited Rose's tardiness and the chaos that surrounded the band as key reasons for his departure. His exit marked a significant loss, as he was a primary songwriter, along with being a stabilizing force for the group. Tensions between Axl and Slash would escalate through the 90s. Creative differences, particularly over the direction of the music, along with Rose's increasing use of synthesizers and backing musicians, had strained it all. In 1996, Slash would leave the band, later describing his departure as necessary due to the toxic work environment and irreconcilable differences with Axl Rose. All throughout the 2000s, Guns N' Roses underwent numerous lineup changes, with Rose remaining the only constant member. Legal battles over the band's name and its royalties would further strain relationships, with Slash and Duff pursuing successful solo projects, while Rose continuing to work on the long-delayed Chinese Democracy album. In 2016, Guns N' Roses surprised their fans with a partial reunion of its classic lineup, which included Axl Rose, Slash, and Duff McKagan. While the reunion tour was commercially successful, old tensions would occasionally resurface, and despite it all, they had managed to maintain a relatively stable lineup while continuing to tour extensively. The Beach Boys. Formed in 1961, the Beach Boys quickly rose to fame with their unique surf rock sound. The original lineup included Brian, Dennis, and Carl Wilson, along with their cousin Mike Love and their friend Al Jardine. Early on, Brian Wilson emerged as a creative leader, but his dominance would lead to internal tensions, particularly with Mike Love. Wilson's mental health issues and substance abuse led to erratic behavior and periods of withdrawal from the band, and by 1967, he had suffered a nervous breakdown, which led to his reduced involvement in touring and recording. His absence from the band would lead to a leadership vacuum and increased tensions as the remaining members had struggled to fill the role. One of the most significant sources of conflict would be the creative direction of the group. Brian's desire to experiment with more complex and avant-garde music had clashed with Mike Love's preference for a traditional surf rock sound, and the tensions came to a head during the recording of Pet Sounds and the abandoned Smile project, which had caused friction amongst its members. Dennis Wilson's substance abuse and tumultuous personal life had further strained the band, and his erratic behavior and legal troubles, including a brief association with Charles Manson, had caused significant stress. His subsequent drowning in 1983 was a tragic loss and deeply affected the band's dynamic. The band's conflicts would often spill over into legal battles. In the 1990s, Mike Love had sued Brian Wilson for songwriting credits and royalties, claiming that he had been unfairly excluded from credits on many of the band's biggest hits. Love ended up winning the case and made the tensions worse between him and Brian.
Do you keep in contact with the Beach Boys at all these days?
Not at all. No, I don't like Mike Love at all. No.
Why is that, Brian?
Because I don't like his attitude is too egotistical.
The death of Carl Wilson in 1998 from lung cancer would be another major blow to the band. Known as the peacemaker amongst its members, Carl's absence left a void and caused further fragmentation. In 2012, surviving members reunited for a 50th anniversary tour and an album, That's Why God Made the Radio. Despite initial success, it would be short-lived. Mike Love owned the rights to the band's name and decided to continue touring without Brian Wilson, Al Jardine, and David Marks, and this led to quite the public fallout. Despite all of the mess and the conflicts and fallouts, the Beach Boys had innovative harmonies and influential albums that solidified their legacy. Their story is a complex mixture of creative brilliance and personal turmoil, which made their journey one of the most fascinating in rock and roll. If you like this video, why not take a look at more bandmates who hated each other? And while you're at it, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe for the latest videos from Project Hysteria. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.